And so we're excited to have a really important discussion, and so we're going to jump right into it. We do want to leave some time at the end for questions, and so if you do have questions, we want to hopefully have some time to get into that, but we're super excited for our discussion. And so I want to start with you, Dr. Jeff. Yes, okay. I'm just a formal. I just respect and honor, you know? And so, Jeff, why don't you begin just sharing with us some of your experience and your journey pursuing health and fitness and how you've kind of gone through ways of optimizing that to the glory of God, if you will.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. First, a shout out to this table of guys here who was bold enough to bring a bag of poutine to a health and wellness session. Yeah. I mean, so we're setting the bar low already, so this is good. Yeah, I mean, that's a huge thing. I could talk all day, but I won't. My wife said I will anyway. So first, a little bit of background. So I'm 51, but I'm going to take you back to what I refer to as my fat crisis of 09. FC09. I have a T-shirt somewhere that I got made as a reminder. And it was my 35th birthday. And I had always, well, okay, let me take you back further. The day of my birth. It was a bit of a messy affair. Yeah, no, I have very vivid memory. No, I was always someone who played sports, and I was a skinny kid, and I didn't have to, quote, worry about my health. And everybody said, someday it'll catch up with you. I'm like, I don't know. I'm just a skinny kid. I don't seem to have to worry about eating Doritos. Until I did. Back to my 35th birthday, my wife was taking me out to dinner. She's a lovely gal. And I couldn't find a pair of pants that I could get buttoned. It is a problem for social reasons as well at restaurants. No shirt, no shoes, no pants, no service. So, I distinctly remember, I punched an extra hole in the biggest belt that I had, and I wore a sweater that was long enough to cover the half-open fly, and I felt really bad during dinner. And I came home, and I was looking in the mirror, standing there in my boxer shorts, and I had a vision of my father, who, on my frame, at approximately 100 pounds of not that, and I had a vision into my future, and I said, well, I got to make a change because there's one of two roads I can go down. I can just sort of keep doing what I'm doing, which is heading in that direction. Not that my dad wasn't an amazing guy, but he struggled with health and fitness and overweight and obesity and a bunch of health issues for his whole life, and I didn't want that. And I also know, coming from a healthcare background, about all of the health issues that go with overweight and all that stuff. And I also knew that even at that early stage, it was starting to take a toll on the rest of me, mentally, physically, psychologically. And as I came to learn, even spiritually, I'm like, okay, I got to make a decision. And so I did. And, I won't ramble on because that story can take days to tell. But it was at that point, 16 years ago now, that I made a decision. And we can get in sort of the hows and the whys and what to do with that. But that decision was pretty critical for all of those reasons in my life. And so we're looking up here, guys, jacked all to bits. That's not me, and nothing wrong with that. Mark's not going to hell just because he could rip through the wall.
Nope. Not anymore, anyways.
And again, we're going to talk about sort of all the different aspects of health and fitness and what that means and stuff, but it is much bigger than looking cut. Gosh, do you look cut. But anyway, that's not what it's about, and Mark will be the first one to tell you that it is not. But it is pretty critical, I think, to fit in all the other pieces together. So I'll stop talking now and hand it over to
Yeah, Mark, I'd love to hear a little bit of your journey. We know that you are definitely have the biceps.
Matt, you're drooling.
Yes, absolutely. And so tell us a little bit. I seen in your bio you've been in the gym for 40 years.
Yeah, so that kind of makes me a little bit old, I guess.
Yeah,
but,
tell us about
I'm
it.
52. I did start around 12 years old with my father, former RCMP, training with him. Mostly just to improve your sports, gain a little size, a little speed, a little muscle. Kind of get out of the sports around 19 to a few injuries and just got into body shaping. I don't ever call it bodybuilding. I was never interested in on stage or anything like that, but definitely into shaping your body, getting it to look the way I thought I wanted it to look. And 20 to 30, really good. Kids started getting active in sports, kind of phase in, phase out, the PX90, like kind of in and out, and kind of lost a little bit, and then got in a really bad phase, probably like Jeff, and we went to Florida. My wife posted a picture, and I was like, that's not me. And she's like, oh, yeah, it is. I'm like, oh. So anyways, I went from, at that point, it was 215, fairly flabby, and I cut right down to 181 to bare pretty much low as you can get, and then built back up slowly. So it was a fun little journey. Like Jeff was saying, I've kind of gone all into looks, less functional, and if I had any advice, I would do the more functional thing. You can definitely lose ability to do certain things in flexibility and sports-wise. So flexibility, or functionality is definitely where I would recommend most people go, but I mean, it certainly hasn't totally made it a bad choice. So, but I didn't have the spiritual, so I've only been a Christian for 3.5 years. So a lot of my years of life have been big mountains, crash and falls, right? So if you don't have Christ in your life, you're not centering anything. You go into idolatry of the gym. You idolize the wrong things, right? You put the wrong things in your life. You're chasing women. You're chasing everything in the gym. And the gym is just one of those places that you can fall prey easily, right? So like we were talking earlier, you have to have your full armor of God going into the gym. Like there's a lot of temptation. You got pride. You have lust. You have temptations of drugs. Everywhere you turn, you're going to have a temptation. So you got to be solid there and ready and go with God, honoring God in there. So yeah.
Yeah, amen. Yeah. Amen. Thank you, brother. Pastor AJ, I want to hear some pastoral perspective on the topic of optimizing.
I don't get to tell my story like these
No,
guys.
you do.
No,
you do.
no.
Let me set it. Let me
no,
set the
no.
table for you. Let me set it up. I would love to hear, just as a man of God and as a pastor, just why physical health is important to you, particularly with the unique calling that you have. So that's part one. So you get to tell your story. But then the follow-up question is, in pastoral ministry, in shepherding a church, how do you see men wrestling with their physical health? Like, what do you see? Are they struggling? Are they, jacked? Are they healthy? Like, what are you seeing maybe where men are within their physical health from your lens as a pastor?
Yeah. My story and kind of my reason is because my dad had your experiences. My dad's a pastor and did basic military training in his 20s, hit his mid-30s, saw a picture of himself on a beach, and kind of same thing, who's that guy? So he went to Canadian Tire and bought what some of you probably have in your basement still, the Joe Weider bench press, the Joe Weider bar, and all this plastic cement-filled weights. All your basements are collecting old clothes on those in your basement right now. My dad went out, and then he's still doing that. He's a pastor, and he realized that if I'm going to preach on discipline and holiness but not take care of my body, what's the deal? And so he took care of himself. So I actually grew up around a dad who valued fitness, who valued health. I remember watching Magnum PI with him. He would jump down the floor, crank at his push-ups at night, do his crunches. He'd be in the weight room at home, which was in his study as a pastor. So my journey in the church and as a son was that my dad works out. My dad takes care of his health. My dad is strong. My dad can pick things up. Like he can play ball with me. When I'm 16, he's still in the ball field. When I'm 19, he wants to hit the gym with me and have a bench off. So it was just such a normal part of my upbringing. But to your second question, it would not say it's a normal part of the church.
Yeah.
It is not normal for men in the church to have a high value on physical health. And I would actually say it's not even a high value of clergy. The clergy who lead, it's not a high value. And I think what my dad felt 40 years ago, that if we're going to talk about holiness and discipline with sexual purity or not get drunk, maybe we watch what we eat. Maybe we take care of our health. That maybe if holiness is real, it's actually holistic and all-encompassing. So I don't see that a lot now, and I think it's because they think I'm not going to bench 315. I'm not going to squat 405, so I'm not doing anything. So I think there's a lot of either bad information or bad ideas of, if I'm going to get healthy, I'm hitting a bodybuilding stage. Foolishness. So I don't see much of it. Why do I not see much of it? I think men, by and large, already have a lot of responsibilities on their plate. They already have a longer to-do list than they can get done in the day. And then health and fitness feels like one more thing they can't get done, versus realizing it's the thing that fuels the to-do list. It's not the last thing on the list. It's the thing that if we care for, makes the to-do list a whole lot easier. And Jeff hit it. There's a lack of vision. I don't know what I want my body to do. I don't know who I want to be in 20 years from now. So I can eat a large pizza, a whole box of mac and cheese, no consequences. Well, enjoy being 25, because 45 is coming and 55 is coming. So without that vision, I think people just drift. It's an accident, but it's just drifting.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I don't know when's the last time someone heard a sermon on gluttony. But you don't even hear that preached a lot about just the sin of overeating or overindulging. Yeah, we need food to survive, but it's also there's stewardship of our bodies, which I think is really important to God. And I'm always mindful, not to sound cliche, but I know for me in my journey, I always think about that. Again, I want to be holistic, and I want my body to honor God. Just like I want my spirit. And sometimes we have this tension between like the spiritual health and physical health. It's like this Gnosticism that's sometimes in the church, that we're only to value our spiritual health. It's almost like, I'm going to get my resurrection body anyway, so I'm just going to ignore it while I'm living. But I think it's important to God how we steward our bodies as much as we steward anything else in our discipleship with Jesus. And so, Jeff, anything you want to add about your observation as a doctor? Where do you see men struggling in their physical health, and maybe even have any perspective on why that struggle seems to be, relevant within the church, within men in the church?
Yeah, I mean, society at large, no pun intended. The current number, I just looked it up last week to see what the current awful number is. It's like 70% of Canadian numbers, Canadian men are either overweight or obese. 70. And it doesn't mean that the remaining 30% are fit. It just means that they don't weigh enough on the scale to tip into the quote-unquote unhealthy range. I would imagine that probably far less than that number are actually fit. Like if you said, oh, your kid's on fire, can you run over there and get a bucket of just because you're not overweight doesn't mean you're healthy. So it's a wide and a deep problem, as I alluded to earlier. Like, you can't look up a health condition that isn't negatively affected by unhealthiness, right? Heart disease, cancer, like these are directly related to people being overweight and unfit. And that's only the first of the, 800 health conditions that are all linked to that. So from a societal level, it's a massive problem. You touched on something really interesting. Like in the church, we hear sermons all the time about sexual purity, or, I don't drink or I don't smoke. But you'll go eat 5 cheeseburgers in a row. Like, to me, there's a disconnect there. Again, from you know, and the sort of the holiness movement of like, you know, 60s, 70s, 80s, I think part of it's a bit of a pushback from that too. It's like, oh no, you know, we're sort of freed from that. Well, yes, and we're not following the law, big L law. But, you know, the Bible also says our body is a temple. Not that we're to worship the temple, but it is a place where we worship. Also within the church, we have a greater understanding of that spiritual side, whereas most people don't. Most people will understand that if they're not fit or healthy, and they're not sleeping well, and they're not eating well, yeah, they're grouchy, right? They say, oh, my mood is bad, or my feelings are bad. Well, your spirit's bad, you just don't have a name for it yet. But it's all connected. And there's reams of secular medical research out there that point to that. It's not just sort of a churchese word that we use, oh, well, our spiritual health is good. No, like they've done the studies. Like your emotions, your spirit, your whatever nice medical word they want to put onto it too, is directly tied to all the other things. And why shouldn't it be, right? We are a whole person.
No, I love that. And I want to talk about another aspect of our bodies and being healthy, and that is the issue of shame. And Mark, you were kind of alluding to this in your opening remarks, how sometimes our motives for being fit can be off, or we do it in ways that are ungodly in terms of maybe like punishing ourselves, or you know, or not, or restraining to such a point where it's like these extreme diet fads. I don't know if you've seen it. There's like this viral clip of this fitness influencer who gets up at 3 a.m. and puts banana peels on his face, and he got melted. Anybody see this guy? He got like 500 million views. He got like an 8-hour morning routine. He got abs everywhere. And it's just, it can make you feel like that's the bar you have to live up to as men. I'm sure all of us, you know, have had moments where there's shame about our dad bods or just our physical shape. I know it's already been mentioned about seeing pictures and seeing ourselves almost unrecognizable. So there's a lot of shame. And so how do you wrestle through that, Mark? I'll start with you, but everyone can chime in on this. How do you deal with shame as it relates to being physically healthy in terms of not, you know, having to be, you know, envious or be full of yourself, but how to have a healthy view of our bodies and not get caught up in pride and ego in ways that are just unsustainable and unhealthy?
Yeah, we can go both ways, right? We can look at somebody and go, we're not that bad, so I'm pretty good shape. And then you can go the other way and get into these YouTube. These people are not looking like this every day. They're looking at like this for 2 or 3 hours in a six-month period, right? Like, it's not real. We really just have to look at ourselves and get a realistic goal for yourself. Small bits at a time. Try to knock off 10% and just go after that. Look in a long term. Nothing's going to happen overnight. You should be looking at a year's time. From a year's time from now, this is what I'm going to do this, and we're going to see where we're at. We're going to, you know, you can do spot checks along the way, but look at a year's time. In fitness, it's a long game process, right? If you're expecting quick gains, or if you're getting quick gains, there's going to be downfalls to it. If you start off too heavy, you're going to damage tendons. You're going to be out of the gym before long. And it's one of the big things you see in the gym. They come, they think they're Superman, they go really hard for a month and a half, and then you never see them again, right? So setting realistic goals you don't have to be jacked or ripped or cut. It's just getting into a body shape that is going to be good for you. You should be able to walk with your wife. You should be able to play with your kids. You should be able to do normal things in life. And if you're not doing that, you're robbing yourself of what God intended us to do, really.
That's good.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to jump in on body and shame?
Yeah, I would say the shame thing is the image piece. And what you said, well, people peeking for a photo or a video or something is silliness, but swapping the image for a vision of, I got 2 sons, I've got a daughter as well. I would like to walk her down the aisle. I would like to be there, first of all. I'd like to have the capacity to walk down the aisle. I've got 2 sons. We might hit that arm wrestle table in a couple of years, me and my boy, and I want to kick his rear end as long as possible. I want to play basketball with my kid. I want to be able to pick up their kids someday if I get ever to have grandkids. Like, there's got to be some vision for how I want to function or mow my lawn without having to take 5 breaks. Whatever the vision is, shame is rooted in the image. I would say vision's rooted in the function. What do you want to do with your body the next 10 to 20 years? I'd swap the image for the vision piece out. What do you want this thing to do?
Jeff, you want to add anything?
No. That was good.
That was good. That was good. Okay, we beat you guys up enough about maybe you're not in your best optimal shape. That's not our intention. But we're going to move to some practical applications and just some hacks and habits and ways that, you know, when you leave here today, you can make an adjustment, whether you're just starting the journey or whether it's something that you just want to add to kind of be more optimal and holistic in your health. And so, Jeff, what's your routine? And everyone, actually, I love to hear all you guys' routines, but what's your fitness routine? Let's go training, diet, just what are your habits that facilitate being healthy for you?
How much time do we have? So I'm going to take that up a level. Because unless there's a why, there's never going to be a what. So one of the best books I read in the last 5 years called Atomic Habits.
Good book.
It is a great book. And I would recommend it. It's not a Christian book. It's sort of, you know, just a life book. But the quote that has stayed with me in so many aspects of my life is this: we do not rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. And man, is that ever true. Like, it doesn't matter what you're talking about. Fitness, work, marriage, Christianity, like whatever, right? We have this ideal in your mind, oh, I want to do this. That's good, but how are you going to get there? Because unless you have a blueprint to how you're going to get there and why you want to get there, you're never going to get there, right? Pastor Brent loves to say there's no such thing as accidental abs. There just isn't, right? And also, you know, the right thing to do and the hard thing to do are usually the same thing to do. Nothing in life that has value is easy. So when you know it's going to be hard, you can't just say, oh, I want to be that, but not have a plan. So you got to build a system for it. Now I'll answer your question. So when I had FC09, I realized that whatever system, and I didn't have the Atomic Habits framework, but I knew in my life I didn't have anything built that was going to change anything, right? Because to expect a result that's different from what I have now, but not being willing to make any changes, that's insanity. So I knew that the system that I had right then was in no way going to get me off of the path that I was on, but I needed to make a pretty drastic change. I also knew that as a father and a husband and a surgeon and, you know, all the other stuff that we all have in our lives, right? As you say, you're like, oh, I don't have time to add something on. But I realized, yeah, but it's not an add. It's this is the thing that's going to allow me to continue to do those other things into the long term. So it actually has to become a foundational piece, not a maybe some gravy on top if I got a little extra time. Maybe gravy's a bad term to use, as those guys are eating poutine in a health and fitness seminar. So now I promise I will answer your question. So I needed to build a system. I needed to make sure that it was sustainable, right? Because as you said, right, don't go to the gym in January. Like, I just avoid it because there's all the January guys are there clogging up the machines. I know they're going to be gone by February, so I'll go ride my bike for a month. And I didn't want to be the January guy. So I knew I needed to have something that was sustainable. I knew I had a goal of being strong, but functional. I still like to play sports. I still like to do all kinds of things. So I didn't in my mind say, oh, I want to be like the world's biggest man, because there's a big risk of that. So it needed to be sustainable. It needed to somehow be flexible to fit into my somewhat screwy schedule. And it had to be something that I at least moderately enjoyed, because I know myself enough to know that if it's something that I hate, Doesn't matter how important, quote unquote, I'm not going to be able to stick with it. So those were sort of my 3 rules. I didn't really know, even though I'm allegedly a doctor, they don't teach you anything in medical school about health and fitness. That's why all your doctors are fat. It's true. It's true. They don't know anything more than you do. I'm telling you right now. So I didn't know where to start. So I went and bought a book. Like literally, I went to Chapters, and I'm like, that's a bookstore for all you kids. It's like a physical building where you would go purchase books, and then you would read them. Yeah. So, and I just went and I looked through the stack of books, and I wanted something that seemed practical, not like some stupid fad. And I needed like lift this, do that, and I found a book. I have zero affiliation. The guy may be a crackpot or not, but he was an ICU physician, so at least he at one point went to medical school. So and it sort of explained a lot of the physiology of what was going on. So I found that part interesting, but then I eventually got to the part where it was like, lift this for this many times. And it had, to answer the diet bit, it talked a lot about like just basic nutrition. Not like wacky this and weirdo that and this supplement. I mean, this like, eat more vegetables and don't eat potatoes. Stay away from the white stuff. I'm like, okay, this is practical. I can do it. And it gave me a timeline, right? Because you can't just sort of, so it had 6-week check-ins, and it was so structured, which I loved. I'm like, I don't have to think about that. I just got to do what's in the book. And building a system. So I built a system. Well, I built Scott Connolly's system. And 16 years later, I'm still following the same system. I've added in some other things. I found that I really like cycling. And so that's been excellent for cardiovascular fitness, which I think is equally important to muscle fitness, but they're different. If you want to lose weight, don't run. Don't do cardio. It's the stupidest, most inefficient way to lose weight. Lift weights. You need to lift weights. You need resistance training in your life. You need to eat well. You need to sleep a lot. We'll maybe talk more about that later if they let me talk again. And you need some cardiovascular fitness.
Yeah. So, Mark, let's say there's a gentleman here in this workshop who feels inspired and is just, wants to get into resistance training. Very entry-level, basic. What would be like a simple, very easy way to just start effectively resistance training? And let's say this person is, overweight.
Yeah.
What would you suggest?
Again, you have to figure out what's going to work for you. Are you a morning guy? You're an afternoon guy? Even if you're an afternoon guy, is your kids' activities going to continually get in your way? Is things going to interrupt it? So now you maybe have to become a morning guy. So you got to figure out what time you can actually get this done. The workout itself, keep it simple, stupid. Like, honestly, you see these guys on a balance ball doing arm curls. Like, do the arm curl, learn the arm curl, learn the basics. The rest of it, if you're going to be a hockey player or something like that, yeah, you can get into the other stuff. But to lose weight, keep it simple. 3 exercises per body part, 2 body parts a day for 3 days a week will get you a decent build, really, in a year's time.
Thank you for considering me decent.
100 and some kilometers a day biking doesn't, it's not quite as nothing, right? So, so 3 days a week, 2 body parts a day. If you can go past that, great. But what I've seen most effective, so anywhere from a moderate to a very successful person in the gym, is following the basics. Like, it's consistency. Getting in there every week, at every time, not missing workouts, not going for 3 months and then taking off and coming back. Diet, that's not, again, it's not crazy diets. It's knowing high protein, moderate fat, and moderate carbs, right? So you can get these things, you can get macro counters or whatever, but if you just use your basic common sense, you know that sitting down and eating a bag of Lay's chip is not going to give you abs. And just form. Forget the weight, forget the ego lifting. It's going to get you nowheres. Nobody looks at you at the gym pushing two plates and it's all over the place and say, oh, that guy's really good. Like, it's not. Everybody's like, what is that guy doing? So it is. And form is more than just the motions. It's actually getting your mind-muscle connections. And that's probably the biggest important factor of resistant training is getting your muscles to control the muscle that, your mind to control the muscle that you're trying to work out. You see guys doing arm curls and just going like this. Maybe the form looks good, but they're not using that muscle. And you have to actually make a mental contact that, squeezing it at the ends. And those will give you a successful workout for 3 days a week. You'll be great. Like it's a great way to go. And if you want to go further, awesome. If that's where you want to stay, great. 20, 30 minutes of cardio, maybe in the evening, going for a walk with the wife. It's going to up the game. But again, it's not the way to lose weight, but it does definitely gives you a great time with the wife and time to relax out in the nature. It's that. But you have to find a time that will work for you and that you're not going to skip. Because skipping is just the end of it.
Yeah, that's good. AJ, anything you want to add in terms of your routine or hacks that you've learned?
I think those are killer advice. I'd throw in one more thing that a lot of guys are not great at is if you can, find a training partner. I think a lot of people go into a gym and feel lost, or they're bored, or they're lonely, or whatever. If you have somebody you can kind of spar with, whether it's walking, running, biking, or hitting the gym, if you got someone to go back and forth with, I think that is a huge X factor to taking care of yourself, is having somebody who's in it with you. Don't make it your wife.
No.
Don't do it, gentlemen. Don't do it. Find a bro, make fun of him a lot, and leave your wife alone. Get a gym bro. But I think people forget having somebody who's in it with you is a huge X factor.
Particularly early on,
Oh,
I
big
would
time
say.
early
Like
on.
once it becomes sort of part of your life and your lifestyle, I actually find it inconvenient now to exercise with people just for scheduling, but it was really critical for me early on when you're just sort of building these habits to know that, well, Chris is at the gym, and if I don't show up at that time, he'll probably just go home and eat a cheeseburger. So it was more of I wanted to save Chris. But
No, that's good. One thing I've experienced in terms of, I have a busy family, I have 4 kids, a lot of different things on the go, and so efficiency is really important for me. So one thing, I don't love doing cardio, and so one thing I do when I'm resistance training in the gym is I always walk in between my sets. So I get my steps in and my cardio while I'm training, and that's really helpful for me because I don't really have time to go on a cardio machine after if I want to do some cardiovascular work from my heart. Also, when it comes to diet, I found sometimes I struggle with, like, I want to change every bad habit, like, today, like, everything, change it all, a whole haul turnover. And I found something more sustainable for me is swapping things. And so instead of, regular Coke, drink Coke Zero. Instead of pop it all, I drink a lot of sparkling water because I like a good fizz, I want to feel my drink. And so, I'm bubbly, I might as well get a bubbly subscription because I really like sparkling water. But just swapping out foods I find helpful than trying to do this massive overhaul of your diet, just trying to swap things. And I find that works for me, especially when it comes to efficiency and not trying to do too much all at once. And then I do it for a week and then it all falls apart and I'm back in that same rut and bad habit. And so I find the swapping of food choices to be an effective strategy and hack when you're trying to incorporate more things. And also when I've been overweight, just simple things of reducing sugar and walking more will shed a lot of just excess pounds. Just starting really simple. It doesn't have to be a full, training regime to get results. You can just make really simple steps and it will add a lot of value to your physical health for sure. Let's talk about stress real quick. Because managing stress is a huge thing to optimize health. I heard somebody say that as men, but really in general as human beings, especially as followers of Christ, it's not the pace of life, it's the weight. And as men of God, I'm sure we all can testify that we carry weight and stress and responsibility, and it can be heavy at times and can weigh us down and inhibit our ability to be healthy. And so I'd love to hear from you gentlemen, what are some ways that as men we can manage the stressors of life in order to optimize health? And just jump in, whoever wants. Actually, you know what? Jeff, go ahead. You start us off. You look ready.
I'm always ready. So, again, big picture, when I'm not exercising or if I haven't had the ability to do that in a few days, if I'm not sleeping properly, if I'm not eating healthy, it reduces the margin in my mind and my spirit to handle that stress. I'm shorter tempered with my wife and my kids. I'm not in tune with the spirit. There are, without a doubt, connections between your physical state and your emotional and your spiritual state. The sleep thing, like if I would to say of all of that stuff, I would say that would be one thing that I have learned. And now my job has forced me to be a morning person in the sense that I have to get up early. I was way too late in life to learn that should mean that I should go to bed early also. Fortunately, I married someone who likes to go to bed early and get up early, which therefore, if I wanted certain other activities to happen, I needed to go to bed early. Cardio, yes, Mark, thanks. That has been, I would say, one of the best, if you want to say a life hack. It's rare that I'm not in bed by 9 o'clock. And you're like, what? 9 o'clock? What are you, 7 years old? Nope. I get up at 5 because I have to. And I know that if I want my body and my mind and my spirit to be functioning, I need about 8 hours of sleep. Well, if I count back from 5, that equals 9. And then you say, I do so much after 9. Really? What do you do? That's productive, that's useful, that is meaningfully beneficial to your life after 9 o'clock. I dare say, if you look at it through that filter, it's very little. I watch television. Waste of time. I like hockey. Who cares? Hockey's stupid. And I had to get that in there. Okay? Does the fact that you watch or do not watch on television the Toronto Maple Leafs in any way influence the way that they lose a game? No, it does not. Right. So that would be my number one suggestion is go to bed earlier. Okay, I don't know a single human being that constantly complains about, I'm sleeping way too much lately. Okay, words never spoken. But how many of you said, man, I'm just so tired? Go to bed. Good things might happen at 9 o'clock too.
I would say when the stress goes up, we do stay up later, and then we run through drive-through or convenience stores to find our food. Higher the stress, they'll think we have less margin. Grab something on the run, said by every guy in a hurry who's stressed out. And I've noticed the same thing. When my sleep is bad and I eat poorly, everything else is a train wreck.
It's a ripple effect.
And so it's almost the more stressed you are, the more diligent your sleep should be. The more stressed you are, the more diligent your food should be. Because once that snowball gets out of control, it is hard to put back.
Mark, anything you want to add about managing stress?
Again, I think sleep is just the number one. Like it can't be understated. Everything they've said is 100% true. And I mean, having good Christian brothers that you can talk to and, getting stuff off, but sleep is 100% the one thing you can control. And definitely, yeah.
So speaking of sleep, I know sometimes it's hard to, even if you wanted to go to bed early enough to get, let's say, 7 to 8, 9 hours. Some people, I'm sure there's guys in here who have sleep apnea. I'm sure people have sleep paralysis. If you're like me, my bladder control is not the greatest, and so I'm up a few times, having to use the bathroom, which kind of breaks up my sleep. But is there ways to create, whether it's room temperature or not watching screens, but are there some habits or ways to optimize getting the best quality sleep possible that we can leave these guys with just some tips on that? How do you optimize sleep?
I don't think people actually train themselves to sleep. I mean, your bedroom is for sleeping or cardio, whichever one.
One Flesh Ministries.
What? You need to go have a bubbly.
Yeah, how much time do we got?
get the TV out of the bedroom, get the iPad out of the bedroom, get the phone out of the bedroom. Like, people, tell your spouse if you have to, we don't do like business. My wife loves, as I'm going to sleep after a board meeting, how was the board meeting? Nope, we're not doing this. Like, I need to, like, we actually teach ourselves how to sleep. And so I think people, when their sleep time is erratic, when they're drinking too much water before they go to bed, like, there's things we can do to prepare ourselves to actually get more out of our sleep. So I think there are people in bed for 10 hours getting 3 hours of sleep. So I think there are people in bed way too long, but they're not getting their sleep when they're there. So I think actually playing with your sleep habits and preparing yourself for sleep, temperature, pillow, darkness, whatever, but get the screens out would be the first start. Get rid of those in a hurry.
Anything else you guys want to add to that?
No, I mean, that's the easy low-hanging fruit. We know that screens, particularly the smaller the screen, the more stimulating it is for your brain. Not because it's little, just the kind of light that comes from our phones and our iPads is different from a television. It's different from a movie screen. So stop looking at your phone like at least a half an hour before you're going to bed. And the worst thing you can do is be lying in the dark, in your bed, reading your phone. It's bad for your eyes anyway. They'll stay crossed. That's what my mother said. She was a liar. That's easy, okay? There are entire textbooks written on, the term is sleep hygiene. Kind of sounds grimy, but it's sort of all of the habits and all of the influences that either make or break your sleep. Google it. Like, how do I sleep good? I mean, it'll probably think you're an idiot if you type it like that. It'll get like kindergarten answer. But there's great, like any good website, sleep hygiene, it'll go through stuff like, temperature and when you should be drinking. And what happens if you're just sitting there tossing and turning? Should you just lie there and like hold your, no, they actually say you should get up and walk around and still keep it dark and don't pick up your phone, but read a book. Again, for the younger crowd, that's like this thing with paper in it. It has words printed. It's quite nice. Getting into a routine is also, now some people are shift workers and you can't always dictate life and stuff happens, but having a bedtime, again, like I'm not kidding, like 9 o'clock, it's like I don't really care if I'm on vacation or if I'm at home or if I'm at XY. Like as soon as I got to the hotel last night, I was like, phew, it's 10 o'clock, this is crazy, I'm going to bed. And getting into that routine, also trying to get up at the same time. So instead of, wow, this is my weekday, I go to bed at 9 and get up at 5, but on the weekends I'm going to stay up really late and then I'm going to sleep in until 9. Bad idea. Like getting into that rhythm, like I now wake up at 4:58, ready to go. Like I don't have to set an alarm ever. So that would be.
Well, that's good. I know I have a smartwatch, and I find having the analytics and the feedback loop of how my sleep is, and it measures my heart rate and all these different things. I find that having that information and being able to track things, again, it's getting a little bit nerdy or a lot of analysis, but I find for me, having that feedback is helpful to see how is my body responding, because just going off my feelings can be very deceiving about what's really going on with my health and how to optimize it. We are coming towards the end of our time, and we do want to leave a few moments for you guys to ask questions, because I know this is an important topic. That's why you're here, and we appreciate your investment in wanting to learn more about optimizing your health. But as we kind of wrap up our panel discussion piece, if you could leave these gentlemen, these men of God, one word of encouragement, it could be practical, it could be inspirational, but if you can leave these brothers with something just to encourage them on their journey to steward and to honor God holistically, what would that encouragement be? Whoever's ready to go can just start.
What got the pastor for?
You're the pastor.
I think I'd remind all the men, your body's not your own. You were bought with a price.
Yeah, amen.
Yes, you are a spiritual being, but your physical body was bought with a price. We are called to steward the body that he gave us. Please steward it well.
Amen.
Mine would be similar to what, it was a great parenting session earlier this morning, and one of John's key points was it's not too late. You know, you think, oh, I wrecked being a dad, my kids are grown, I'm not even going to bother trying. Ah, terrible, terrible advice. Like, your improvement can start the minute you walk out that door. Like, there is no, I missed the boat.
I agree. It's never too late, and age doesn't really have anything to do with it. No matter how big you are or whatever, you're never going to be big. Start tomorrow, and then pray. Like, I will not leave my driveway going to the gym until I'm done praying. I do ask him for guidance while I'm there. I ask him for humility. I ask him to protect me from anything there. I ask him for opportunities to speak to other brothers that are in the gym and just be with me. So, yeah, include him in everything and make him your number one priority. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great wisdom. And one thing I'll add is kind of building off what Pastor AJ said, is just looking at optimizing health in our physical bodies as a stewardship issue, just like we look at finances, or we look at just our spiritual health, our spiritual disciplines. Looking at our physical body as something that God has called us to steward well, and we want to honor and love God with how we treat and steward and care for our bodies. And again, we're called to have an abundant life in Jesus, and I think his desire is that we're whole and healthy, and we have that idea of shalom, nothing missing, nothing broken, not that we don't have challenges, but that through Christ we can be healthy men of God. And so that would be my word, to just steward what God has given you well, and I think that's key to optimizing health. So with that said, we have a few minutes for some questions. Yes, go ahead.
I have 2 young kids.
Get your steps in. That's good.
Hey, so thanks for your chats. I've taken lots of notes. This has been very helpful. So I have 2 young kids, a 2-year-old and an infant. Both of them wake us up probably once a night each. And then I like to walk to work. I love walking to work. It's about a 40-minute walk each way. I try to do that so long as it's not raining. However, in the past couple of years, since we've had kids, I feel guilty taking that time away from my family, because I know that my wife really covets the time that I'm home to be able to help her taking care of the kids. And then she tries to sleep whenever I'm able to take care of the kids. That's a lot of stuff. But I'm sitting with some other guys who are in a similar stage of life. Just wondering, do you have any advice for how to take care of our fitness during this stage of life?
Well, since I'm the youngest here and closest to the stage of life. Sorry, Jeff. We've got 3 little kids. They're getting older quickly, but we've got 3 little ones, and we were into foster care, so we had foster kids coming and going. Our deal at home was I'm a better dad and a better husband after I get some time. So I'm not walking to work, but I'll grab a barbell and sling some weights around. But the deal is my wife is a better wife and mom when she gets some time. So it's not just can I have time so I can go do my things. Let me have 40 minutes or 40 minutes there and back to work. I will be a more present dad. I'll be a healthier father. I'm more mentally ready. But then I want to release her for whatever time she needs as a back and forth. So we did the same stage of life. We are still in a stage of life. And the fitness time is non-negotiable any more than the Jesus time is, because I'm just a better dad, better husband, better pastor when I'm healthy and whole. You old guys want to chime in at all?
I vaguely remember having kids at one point. And vague because I was tired too. So at that point in my life, and the FC09, you guys are all going to go, this guy's weird. He got this T-shirt. We had little kids at the time. And at that point, it didn't make sense for me to buzz off early in the morning because, kids getting up and all that stuff. So we would put the kids to bed, and then that was my window of opportunity. My wife, didn't want to go to the gym with me. So I don't know, she watched TV and ate chips probably. And she somehow can still do that and stay super skinny. And I would go to the gym in the evening, or I would do my walk in the evening. So, you know, and as the kids have come, because then it became kids playing soccer season or whatever they're into in the evening. So that's when I transitioned to, I mostly exercise early in the morning before they're even awake now. So there's going to be, you know, be it kids or be it your shift work or be it your, you know, whatever. I only work nights. Okay, don't work out at night because you get fired. But I'm with him. Like, it's not negotiable. It's going to fit in somewhere in the waking hours. Maybe the waking hours need to get shifted. But it did have to happen.
And you may have to change things too. Maybe you can't walk both ways to work. Better off driving and taking 45 minutes and just going for a walk in the evening or in the morning, right? So, and believe it or not, the sleeping when they got the young kids, it just gets more hectic. Like it doesn't get easier. There's less and less time, right? They get into sports activities. You get you'll have them east side, west side, different provinces. You have to make that time. Otherwise, your whole life will just be gone, and you'll just be like, how did that happen? Yeah.
Yeah, good question. Yes, right here.
Oh no. Don't give him the mic.
Hey guys, appreciate your points. What do you do when you hit like a plateau? You're trying to lose weight or trying to gain weight, and you kind of just like you're at this sort of same level for months. And how do you get past that and move on, or keep going down or up? You jump in first.
Yeah, I myself, like, I analyze what's going on. I look at my diet. Am I accurate on that? Sometimes something's creeping into your diet that it's just holding you still on that. Sometimes it just happens. It's just something you got to push through. Life is just ups and lows and highs and valleys. We do have it in our religion, in our faith. It's just, you have seasons, right? So you have to push through it. And usually at the end of that push, it's whatever you're trying to do, whether you're trying to gain or if you're trying to lose, it will break through. And it's just pushing through it, really. Analyze what's going on. Are you doing something different that's stalling it? But generally, your body just stalls out. Maybe change a workout a little bit, but for the most part, just keep going steady. And if everything's in line, it will break through. Yeah.
And now I'll give you the exact opposite advice. In that our bodies respond to stress. Okay? But what was stress 6 months ago, our bodies have adapted to that, and that's now our new baseline. So you have to be constantly changing. Now we're talking pretty specifically right now about either bigger gains in the gym, although there is like a human limit to how strong you can get, except for Mark here apparently. Look at this guy, it's unreal. But particularly on the weight thing, right? And most of us, many of us in this room are now sort of past 22, and every year it seems to get harder and harder, and this little soft area seems to just be getting a little bit bigger. And it does get harder because our bodies do change over time. However, doing similar but different, and this is one thing I learned from that book that I have no affiliation with, is that every 6-week period, it was similar exercises, but it was maybe a different pattern of them, or maybe fewer reps and more sets or something. But changing physiologically is often sort of the switch, realizing that, okay, I'm going to have to do it again in another few months because I've sort of grown accustomed to this. But it doesn't have to be a quantum shift, but just changing either the order or the something, or even just say, okay, I've done the bench press for 5 years. Maybe I'm not going to do the bench press now. Maybe I'm going to do this other chest exercise that's equally workoutable. It's just different.
All right, we got time for one more question right here.
Thanks, guys. So my question has to do with hyperfixation, maybe we'll call it. So we know, like the Apostle Paul teaches, we're to worship God in everything we do, and I think stewardship of our bodies is definitely included in that. And for those of us that already do weight training or anything else, monitoring our diets and nutrition, it's work, and it takes a lot of thinking and a fair amount of planning. And I often find myself thinking about C.S. Lewis, who said, the model of Christian humility isn't to think less of yourself, but rather to think of yourself less, right? So I wonder if you have any tips about kind of walking that line between being good stewards, planning, putting the work in, and avoiding that danger of self-obsession or hyperfixation that's inherent, because unlike the other work that I do, this one is actually on me. Like, this is the temple that I'm building, right? So how do you balance that with making sure that I'm still using the temple to worship God and not worshiping the temple itself?
Yeah, I think anybody who plays with fitness on any level can get into hyperfixation, whether it's counting calories, micro, working out in a gym that has 500 mirrors in every direction, lathering yourself up in baby oil to look like The Rock when you're done working out. That can happen to almost anybody. And I would say if you take it seriously, you'll just have to watch that line. I think what he said in the session, was it early this morning? Sometimes we don't have to guard what's sinful, we have to guard what's stupid. And you can train yourself for functional health to steward your body, and you can just give a stupid amount of time to something that's about you and yourself. So I don't know that there's a specific rule for that one, because every person will be different, but I think it's watching, is this actually enhancing my health, or am I just self-absorbed? But that's gonna be different for runners can do that, fitness people, CrossFitters, ugh.
We're not talking about
No
CrossFitters
CrossFitters?
here.
So like, I think everybody needs to watch that a little bit. Function and health, not self-absorption. So I don't know if there's a rule for that though.
No, I don't think it's a rule, no.
Yeah, echo that, and I think what you've heard throughout, the thread sort of going through this is the word balance, right? Like, I certainly don't exercise for the point of being an elite athlete, not at all. I learned a long time ago that in order to stay balanced, including my Christian walk, I needed to be in a place where I felt well. And when I felt physically unwell, that threw the other areas of well off balance, and I wasn't well. And I recognized that, fortunately, early enough that it didn't cost me too many decades of unwell.
I think as Christian brothers in the gym too, we have to check each other, hold each other accountable, be bold enough to say something to a brother that is starting to lose the focus. There's men in this room, I'm pretty sure, that I know personally that has fell away and made it an idol and fell short, right, and fallen. But get yourself back up. But we need to hold each other accountable and be there for each other. That's what Christians do, right? We guide each other. So yeah, I think you have to definitely be bold and let a brother know. Don't be silent. You're not helping them.
Amen. Well, that concludes our panel discussion this afternoon. Can we give it up for our panelists? Yeah. And we want to thank you all for your participation and your focus, and hopefully you can leave here with something practical that you can apply to optimizing your health. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and God bless you all.
And take all your poutine with you.